My dad married me off to a CEO in a business arrangement. The CEO is 6 feet tall and never comes home. We've been married for almost half a year, and I can't even remember what he looks like. But he's loaded, and he gives me a cool $100,000 a month in living expenses, right on time, every time. I'm laughing my ass off. A husband who's never home and a ton of money to spend? Life doesn't get any better than this. After partying with my girlfriends until 3 a.m., I stumbled home, completely wasted. I flipped on the light and saw a strange man sitting on my bed. He looked at me, annoyed, and said, "You're finally back." I jumped, immediately locked the bedroom door, and got ready to call the cops. From the other side of the door, the man's deep voice said, "Sophie, don't tell me you don't remember who I am." With my head swimming in alcohol, I didn't care what he was saying. While fumbling for my phone, I yelled, "I don't care who you are. You're so screwed. Breaking and entering? You're going to jail, asshole. Sophie. I'm your husband." Huh? Husband? My brain cells fought through the alcoholic haze to hold a quick meeting, and it finally hit me. Oh, right. I have a husband. Looks like you've been having a great time while I've been away. Tim sat on the bed in dark silk pajamas, his long legs crossed. I couldn't help but stare at his pale, perfect feet peeking out from under the cuffs. No. I just had a little get-together with my girlfriends tonight. And I just so happened to catch you? Yes. You have to believe me. I've been faithfully waiting for you all this time. Yeah, right. Oh. Is that so? Tim pushed his glasses up with a slender finger, a meaningful smile playing on his lips. You poor thing, it must have been so hard on you. How about I start staying here from now on? What? No, don't worry about it. I panicked, waving my hands frantically. Tim frowned, his eyes narrowing with a hint of a threat. What? You don't want me to come back? Of course not. I gave an awkward laugh. It's just that this place is so far from your office. I'm just worried you'll be exhausted from the commute. Well, in that case, you can just pack your things tomorrow and move in with me. Ugh. How can he say something so bone-chilling with that warm mouth? Is my wonderful married life really over already? Tim insisted I move in with him, and I didn't want to start a fight, so I just went along with it for the time being. After I washed up, I was surprised to find Tim still awake. He even patted the bed, signaling for me to come sleep. I laughed awkwardly and shuffled over to the edge of the bed, reluctantly lying down beside him. He turned off the light, then rolled over and wrapped an arm around me, pulling me into his embrace. His unfamiliar scent surrounded me, and my whole body went stiff. It wasn't that we'd never shared a bed before, but on our wedding night, he was so drunk that he was already gone by the time I woke up. So, this was basically our first time lying in the same bed while both sober. Tim held me close, his face gently nuzzling my hair. He whispered in my ear, his voice as soft as water, "I'm sorry I've neglected you." I didn't dare move, my mind screaming in silent anguish, "It's fine. Please, continue to neglect me. I'm really okay with it." After some hesitation, I decided to have a frank talk with him. I poked his arm. "Look, I get it. We got married for business, not because we have feelings for each other. I honestly don't mind you not coming home. I'm very understanding. I won't interfere with whatever you do on the outside. So, it's really okay if you don't come back. I think the way we had it before was great. What do you think?" Tim didn't answer. All I heard was the steady, deep sound of his breathing. Once I was sure he was asleep, I fumbled in the dark for my phone, ready to text my friends and brainstorm how to maintain my marital freedom. But he was holding me so tight I couldn't break free. I must have moved around too much, because he seemed to wake up. He pulled me in even closer and mumbled, his voice thick with sleep, "Shoo, be still. I have an early meeting tomorrow." That lazy, captivating voice was to die for. It was so soothing I almost passed out. I checked the time. It was already past 4 a.m. Fine, I'll stop struggling. I might as well get some sleep. I had planned to have a serious talk with him when I woke up. Unfortunately, I slept like a log. I have no idea when Tim left. I was woken up by a knock on the door. I opened it to find a professional-looking woman in a sharp suit. She put her phone away and stated her purpose expressionlessly. "Sophie, good morning. I'm Tim's assistant. He sent me to pack up your belongings." "Wait. How come I don't know anything about this? For specifics, please call Tim yourself. Now, get to work." At her command, a team of workers swarmed into the room and started carrying my things out, piece by piece. I was furious. Furious that Tim had made this decision without me, and even more furious that this woman was touching my stuff without my permission. I plopped down on my suitcase and yelled at them, "Put everything down. If you want to move my stuff, you'll have to move me first." The assistant tilted her head and looked at me with a hint of confusion in her eyes. Then she turned to the workers and said, "Move her. You have got to be kidding me. You clever little witch." So there I was, still in my pajamas, sitting on my suitcase, getting moved into Tim's house along with all my stuff. When Tim got home, he was startled to see me like that. I smiled and smoothed my messy hair. I put my hand on Tim's shoulder, pinning him against the wall, and said through clenched teeth, "Listen, we're not in some cheesy CEO drama, are we? Don't you think you should, I don't know, ask my opinion before you do things?" Tim feigned innocence. "I want to live with my wife. Does anyone have a problem with that?" "That's not what I..." "Do you have a problem with it?" "You. You're..." "See? No one has a problem with it." Tim twisted his body, effortlessly dodging my accusations. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. While I was grinding my teeth, Tim seemed to be in an excellent mood. He took off his jacket, and my eyes accidentally landed on his broad shoulders, trim waist, and the muscles of his arms outlined by his dress shirt. I choked on my own spit. Damn, that body. Hearing my cough, Tim turned to ask what was wrong. I quickly tore my gaze away from his perfect ass, frantically covering my burning face with my hands. I made a break for the nearest bathroom to hide. That body in a suit, combined with his cool, almost ethereal face, was a full-on masterclass in repressed sensuality. I couldn't look anymore. Anymore and I'd lose all my humanity. But in the next second, Tim flashed a seductive smile, undid 2 buttons on his shirt, and closed the distance in 2 long strides. He braced his arm against the wall, blocking my escape. I was terrified. This was not a situation a young, inexperienced married woman like me could handle. I huddled in the shadow he cast, like a scared little mouse, and looked up at him, trembling. What do you want?" He leaned in closer. The fresh scent from his neck drifted into my nose, and the pressure was so intense I squeezed my eyes shut. "What do you think I want?" "Ah!" I shrieked, shoved his arm away, and fled into the bathroom. As the door slammed shut, I thought I heard Tim let out a soft, helpless laugh. "Heh, what a kid." "What? He called me a kid? How dare he look down on me?" I told my bestie, Annie, about it, and she just laughed her head off at me. She immediately decided she was going to take me out tonight to broaden my horizons. I excitedly agreed, my fingers flying across the screen so fast I almost poked a hole in it. Late that night, while Tim was sound asleep, I gently pushed his arm away, changed in the dark, and tiptoed out with my heels in hand, ready for my rendezvous. But just as I was about to open the front door, the living room light snapped on. I froze on the spot, feeling like a thief caught in the act, flustered and awkward. "Where are you going?" Tim's voice was low and clipped, each word dripping with menace. I was just taking out the trash. Would you believe me? Dressed. Like that. To take out the trash? Tim's eyes scanned me from head to toe, finally landing on my legs, exposed by the short skirt. I reflexively tried to cover my thighs, but when I looked up, I saw the intense look in Tim's eyes. Why does he look a little off? But it was just a fleeting expression. The next second, Tim turned and walked back into the bedroom, leaving me with a slightly ambiguous command. Come on. Bedtime. Oh. Wow. A man and a woman, alone in the middle of the night. Saying something like that. It really gets your mind racing. But it turned out I was the only one whose mind was racing. When Tim said bedtime, he meant literally just sleeping. He didn't even hug me. I guess he was a little mad at me. I told Annie about it. She replied with a disgusted ugh, your husband's got issues. Her comment made me wonder. Could it be true? Is he not capable? A mischievous thought popped into my head, maybe I should test him. But then I reconsidered. If he is capable, I'm not. Forget it, better not. When Annie found out, she roasted me again. Your husband is that hot and you can actually resist? Sophie, you're the one with issues. I was so embarrassed I turned my phone off. Honestly, talking about issues in the middle of the night. Tim left bright and early again. I think he kissed my cheek before he left, because the feeling of his stubble was too real to be a dream. When I woke up, his assistant was sitting in the living room, working on her laptop. I asked her, confused, why are you here? She flashed me her professional, fake smile. Tim only told me to come. For specifics, please call Tim yourself. After I got ready and was about to head out, the assistant closed her laptop and fell in step behind me. I asked her, are you leaving? She replied, are you leaving? What's the connection between me leaving and you leaving? Your decision to leave or not determines my decision to leave or not. Okay, I get it. This assistant was here to watch me. So, I called Tim myself. Tim, what the hell is this? You sent someone to spy on me. Tim was clearly swamped on his end, but he still managed to placate me. It's not spying, it's companionship. Oh, thanks a lot. Like I don't have any friends and need you to hire someone to keep me company. Tell her to go home. Now. Tim must have heard the anger in my voice. He paused, then said, okay, I understand. A moment later, the assistant's phone rang. It was Tim. She answered with a couple of yeses, then hung up and told me, Tim said I can leave in 2 hours. Why 2 hours? I understood when Tim himself came jogging through the door, trading places with his assistant like it was a shift change. He wasn't going to let me be alone for even a second. I was starting to get scared. I secretly texted Annie, what do I do? I think my husband might be a possessive psycho. For once, Annie was serious. She replied immediately, okay, don't panic. I'm searching what to do when you're loved by a psycho on Reddit right now. A little while later, she sent me another message, good luck. And then another one, this whole psycho lover thing is trending. Can I turn your story into a Reddit post? I replied, be a good person, Annie. Tim said he was taking time off just to be with me. I nodded furiously, not daring to say a single word of protest. Meanwhile, Annie texted me, I heard he is super busy right now. For him to drop everything to be with you. He must be really, really into you. I wanted to cry. I hid in a mall bathroom, reading the psycho lover stories she sent me, imagining Tim grabbing me by the neck and saying, you're never, ever leaving me. I was shaking with fear. I called my dad. Dad, can I get a divorce? My dad was in the middle of a business deal on his end. Hearing my out-of-the-blue question, he lowered his voice and said, don't make me get up and slap you. I got the message and immediately changed my tune. You work so hard, father dear. Goodbye, father dear. No retreat. Time to face the music. I walked out of the bathroom and saw Tim holding a bunch of shopping bags, leaning against the railing and watching some kids dance in the first-floor plaza. He was smiling so gently, his eyes and the corners of his mouth curved upwards, his gaze soft and bright. I remembered the first time we met. We were practically strangers, standing far apart without a word to say. At our wedding, we both wore fake smiles for the guests, looking like a match made in heaven, but in reality, we barely remembered each other's faces. Even so, he had thoughtfully deflected drinks for me, held the long train of my dress, and draped his jacket over my shoulders when I was cold. Could a person this considerate and warm really be that terrifying? What are you thinking about? Tim walked over and poked my forehead. I was wondering. Would you ever hit me? What is wrong with you? Tim rolled his eyes at me, but then a thought seemed to cross his mind. He smirked. Then again, it's not impossible. Oh, crap. I'm in danger. Annie said you should never defy a psycho. Otherwise, either he dies, or you do. But to escape one, the best way is to make him lose all interest in you. So, I spent the night digging up Tim's old interviews and did the complete opposite of everything he said was his ideal type. He likes smart women, so I acted like a complete airhead all day. He likes cheerful and outgoing women, so I became a gloomy, tragic poet. He likes kind women, so I put on a mean girl persona, turning myself into the villainous rich girl from a TV drama. I thought, surely Tim would get sick of me soon. I was on the verge of returning to my wonderful life of being rich, single, and husband-free. Ah! The thought alone was pure bliss. But I never expected that after all my shenanigans, not only did Tim not get tired of me, he started spending even more time with me, always hugging me and saying, "I'm so sorry. I haven't been taking good care of you." I was speechless. What on earth would it take for Tim to leave me alone? Just as I was about to resign myself to learning how to be a proper wife, a miracle happened. Tim went on a business trip abroad. The very next day, news of him spending the night in a hotel with a sexy woman was plastered across every headline. Worried texts and calls from parents, relatives, and friends flooded my phone. Meanwhile, I was at home, looking at the news photos of the sexy, long-haired woman, jumping up and down and cheering at the top of my lungs. I immediately called my lawyer to ask about a divorce. The lawyer sounded a little awkward. "Sophie, perhaps you could finish laughing first, and then we can continue the consultation?" I apologized, but I couldn't stop grinning. The lawyer, clearly a seasoned professional, said kindly, "It's all right. I'll send all the information you need to your phone later." Thank you. Thank you so much. If there was one thing more exciting than a husband who gives you money and never comes home, it's a husband who gives you money, never comes home, and ends up being the one at fault in the divorce. I immediately called Annie. "Babe, we're going out tonight. To celebrate my impending freedom." Are you actually happy, or are you just putting on a brave face? Annie actually questioned me. Of course I'm happy. I'm about to be free. I might even be able to divorce him this time, and if not, I can at least use this as an excuse to make him stay away from me forever, ha ha ha. My laughter died in my throat the moment Tim appeared in front of me, looking like he'd just rushed all the way here. "Tim's back, I'll call you later." I quickly hung up. He didn't look right. His eyes were bloodshot and exhausted, and he was staring at me in disbelief. When I moved closer, he actually took 2 steps back. "Tell me everything you just said. Did you mean it?" Tim looked like he was about to cry, and it threw me completely off balance. "What's wrong? Don't change the subject." Tim yelled, and the tears that had been welling in his eyes finally fell. "I'm asking you, what you just said, was it real or not?" I was stunned into silence, not knowing what to say. Tim looked at me, the disappointment in his eyes growing deeper. Finally, he gave up waiting for my answer, turned, and strode out of the house, leaving behind the deafening slam of the door. I was completely bewildered, just sitting there on the floor with my head in a total mess. Annie called me back to ask what was going on. I told her, I don't know. He cried. He cried and asked me if I meant what I said. I don't know, it's so weird. Why would he react like that? Annie sighed. He's probably fallen in love with you for real. Then why was he spending the night in a hotel with some other woman? Sophie, are you an idiot? The fact that he rushed home to you immediately means it must have been a misunderstanding. But why would he fall in love with me? That's a question for a higher power to answer. A million questions were swirling in my head, but only one thing had a clear answer. Tim wasn't a psycho. He was that angry and hurt, but he didn't do anything extreme to me. But that answer didn't seem to matter anymore. Hey guys, that's all for today. Next up is the long road to winning him back. If you're enjoying the story, please give it lots of likes, hearts, and saves. Thanks so much for your love and support, I really appreciate it. Tim wouldn't answer my calls or come home. My parents and his parents tried to talk to him, but it was no use. His mom told me, I can't do anything. He's been stubborn like this since he was a kid. My dad, at his wit's end, called me. You're the one who scared him off, you're the one who's going to get him back. If you can't, you can pack your bags and get out of my sight. Oh, right, that news story. The sexy woman was his assistant, Kara, who had been urgently called in to work during her vacation. The company's PR department released a group photo from their work session that day, debunking the fake news instantly. So now, the only one at fault was me. Seriously, universe, why do you have to mess with me like this? Tim was dead set on avoiding me. To keep me away, he even had the company security guards memorize my face. My situation was now extremely, incredibly, monumentally difficult. Desperate, I thought of one person who could definitely help me get to Tim. The person closest to him, his assistant, Kara Chen. At the entrance of J Corp, a security guard greeted Kara. Hey, Kara. Brought your mom to work today? Standing next to Kara was me, in disguise. I stared at Kara in shock as she pressed down on my white wig and replied with a smile, yep, just showing my mom around the office. Just when I thought we were going to get away with it, Tim flew past us. He said to the guard and Kara, during this sensitive period, no unauthorized personnel are allowed inside. Kara, you have 3 minutes to get coffee on my desk, or you don't have to come in tomorrow. The next second, Tim was in the elevator, Kara was sprinting to the coffee shop, and I was being stopped at the door by the eagle-eyed security guard. Tim, you win this round. That afternoon, Kara sent me another piece of intel. Tim was going to the estate at 4 p.m. to meet a client. You can't get into the estate without a reservation. I had a friend pull some strings and book me the private room right next to Tim's. But I waited until 6 p.m., and there was no sign of Tim. I texted Kara to ask, and she replied, they went. Someone just told me the meeting finished and they're on their way back. I was shocked and rushed out of the room. But through the window, all I saw was Tim's car driving away. Needless to say, this had to be Tim's doing. Kara was practically crying on the phone, sending me voice messages. Sophie, I'm begging you, please make up with Tim. I don't want to work overtime anymore. On another front, a text from my dad flashed on my screen like a death sentence. Your grandfather's birthday is on Saturday. Bring Tim with you. Don't tell me you two haven't made up yet. Those few words sent a chill down my spine. I quickly replied, we've made up, we've made up. We'll definitely be there for Grandpa's birthday. When I put my phone down, I was drenched in a cold sweat. Making up with Tim was now a matter of extreme urgency. I had Kara send me the details of the hotel Tim was staying at. She replied quickly, adding a message, Sophie, I'm risking my life to get you this intel. You have to succeed, Sophie. You have to. The weight of her expectations was immense, but I didn't want to let her down. I replied, I'll do my best. At 7 p.m., Kara informed me that Tim had left the office. I also left there and headed for the hotel. But at this hour, the city traffic was an absolute nightmare. Just then, Kara sent another message, Sophie, Tim has to go on a last-minute business trip. He's on his way to the airport now. Maybe you should just go home and wait for him to get back. My heart sank. I quickly asked her, when is he coming back? Kara replied, the 18th. That was too late. The 18th was Saturday. There was no way I'd have enough time when he got back. Without much hesitation, I threw open the car door and started running in the direction of the airport. I ran for about 100 yards and then stopped. Who was I kidding? I was wearing 3-inch heels. I could run until dawn and still not make it to the airport. So, when I saw a shared bike, I decisively pulled out my phone, scanned the code, and took off. Once I was out of the traffic jam, I hailed a cab. After a frantic rush, I finally made it. Tim was sitting in the waiting area, on a video call with headphones on. The person next to him motioned for me to wait. I nodded and leaned against a wall, trying to catch my breath. Suddenly, a pair of hands gently patted my back, helping me breathe. I was stunned. I turned around to see Tim. He had ended his call and taken off his headphones. He was looking at me with a frown. But despite the frown, his eyes were gentle. Why were you running so fast? He asked. I was afraid you'd leave. That I wouldn't get to say anything to you. But, thank goodness, I made it. Tim seemed a little exasperated. He handed me a bottle of water he'd already opened. The plane left a long time ago. What? I finally noticed that the massive waiting hall was empty except for him and one other person. Then were you waiting for me? He nodded. How did you know I was coming? The driver called me. I was at a loss for words. Tim prompted me, didn't you come here to say something to me? I wanted to apologize. I'm sorry. I didn't know you'd be worried I'd misunderstand. I shouldn't have been so happy about divorcing you. Seeing you like that. I felt really guilty. Are you being sincere? Or do you just want me to show up with you for your grandfather's birthday party on Saturday? So he already knew about the party. But I'm being sincere. This has nothing to do with the party. I genuinely want to apologize to you. I'm sorry. I never tried to understand what you were thinking. I misunderstood your intentions, and I hurt you. You did hurt me. I flew for over 10 hours to come back and explain things to you in person, only to find you ecstatic about the idea of divorcing me. Hey, come on, let's not bring up that awkward history. Sophie, I feel like we've never really sat down and talked since we got married. Yeah. You're right. So tonight, how about we go home and have a real talk? Huh? Don't you have a business trip? I sent someone else to go for me. Huh? Tim and I, each with a glass of wine, sat lazily on the balcony in our pajamas. The gentle night breeze stirred the hair on his forehead, and I saw a pair of eyes as bright as stars. The Tim I saw tonight was someone I had never seen before. Calm, casual, relaxed, content. He took a sip of wine and looked at me. Honestly, I didn't like you much when we first met. I wasn't offended. I laughed and shot back, what a coincidence. I didn't like you either. You were so cold and aloof, I thought you were trying to act out some cheesy CEO drama. And you weren't any better, dressed in all those colors. You looked like a show peacock. You're the show peacock. You're the show peacock. Tim and I burst out laughing. Neither of us wanted our families to control our marriage, so when we first met, we both tried our best to be as unlikable as possible. It didn't change a thing. Tim continued, right after we got married, I really resisted the idea of seeing you, so I kept using work as an excuse not to come home. But I felt guilty about it, so I could only send you money. Guilty about what? That was the best time of my life. My husband gave me money and never came home. That huge house was all mine. I could sleep however I wanted, come home whenever I wanted. It was amazing. Really? Tim hugged his knees and tilted his head to look at me. His cheeks were flushed, making him look as cute as a little kid. Of course it's real. I couldn't have been more free. Your mom lied to me. Huh? Your mom lied to me. She told me you were a fragile girl, delicate as glass. That you were terrified of being lonely, and that if I left you by yourself, you'd be miserable. My mom said that just to get you to come home? That's so fake. I took a sip of wine to hide my embarrassment. But you posted that on your social media, too, didn't you? Something like, a lonely night, a lonely heart, a sad me. I sprayed a mouthful of wine. Annie posted that. She was drunk and grabbed the wrong phone. I deleted it in seconds. I can't believe you saw it. What? So that wasn't you? I felt guilty for so long, thinking I'd made you that unhappy. A drunk Tim was a completely different person, all soft and cuddly, like a little lamb. Well, it's not too late to know the truth now. We can still go back to how things were. No. Tim suddenly stood up and waved his arm dramatically. I am a man. A man's responsibility is to provide for his family and protect his wife. So. He leaned down, his eyes filled with a sincerity that struck me right in the heart. Sophie, you're my wife now. I have a responsibility to be with you, to take care of you. I was speechless. My heart was in turmoil, warm currents crashing against its shores. But it hadn't completely surrendered. A sliver of reason remained. But our marriage is just a business deal. There are no feelings involved. You might meet someone you really like someday. Who said I don't have feelings for you? He cut me off, his gaze deepening, so intense it felt like he was looking into my soul. My heart beat even faster. And he kept adding fuel to the fire. I don't know when I started to feel differently about you. Maybe it was when I saw you sleeping in a corner in your big wedding dress. Maybe it was when you secretly passed me a cookie so I could sneak a snack. Maybe it was when we stood side by side, dealing with outsiders. Or maybe it was when I got your occasional but sincere messages asking how I was. You just sort of became kind of cute. I sat there, completely stunned. Sophie, I like you. I believe that, with time, that like can become love. What about you? Do you like me? I didn't know if I liked Tim. I only knew that, in that moment, I was starting to have hope for this marriage. Maybe I could hope for happiness. I don't know, I said, shaking my head. But I can try. With that, I leaned forward and kissed his lips. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless one. Saturday. My grandfather's birthday party was a grand affair. My mother, looking regal in her expensive gown, walked over with a glass of wine and nudged me in the ribs. You seem to be getting along well with my son-in-law lately. I took a small sip of wine and smiled without saying a word. Ooh, look at you, getting all shy. All right, Mom, stop teasing me. There are so many people here, it's embarrassing. What's there to be embarrassed about? I'm telling you, your father and I hand-picked this son-in-law for you. You'd better cherish him. Did you hand-pick him from a stack of financial reports? I couldn't help but let a little sarcasm slip into my voice. You, child. My mom tapped my head. What financial reports? We picked him for his character. The men in are hopeless romantics, generation after generation. Every single one of them is a responsible man. What's the use of money? Are we short on money? Your father and I wanted to find you a good, faithful man who would stay with you for a lifetime. I was only just learning how much thought my parents had put into this. You'll understand a parent's heart when you become a mother yourself someday. My mom shook her head and walked away. Tim came over, wrapped an arm around my waist, and asked gently, "What did Mom say to you?" "Nothing. I was just thinking. How lucky I am." Tim rested his forehead against mine and held me even tighter. Annie sent me a text, an interview with Sophie, How do you feel about your husband coming home every day now? I smiled and replied, it feels pretty good. Epilogue. Tim was hugging me, showering my face with reluctant kisses. My phone screen lit up. It was a message from Kara. Sophie, please get Tim to come down. He's going to miss his flight. I thought back to when I first met Tim and his "don't come near me" vibe. It was a world away from the clingy monster he was now. I put my hands on his chest and pushed with all my might, creating 2 inches of space. I wriggled my head out of his embrace and took a deep breath. Can you please, just go? I can't breathe when you're hugging me this tight. You're kicking me out. Do you not love me anymore? No, I love you, I love you. You're my heart, my soul, 3/4 of my life. Just go already. I cooed at him while grabbing his luggage and ushering him to the door. Then, seeing my chance, I yanked the door open and pushed him out. Babe, I'll be back as soon as I can. He yelled through the door. Okay. Love you, babe. I yelled back. At the same time, I frantically texted Kara, keep him busy. Make him stay out of town for as long as possible. There's a reward in it for you. Kara replied, that new handbag we saw at the mall. Make it happen, and I promise you'll see it again. Deal. Night fell. The flashing disco lights sliced the darkness into a rainbow. Annie leaned in close, a drink in her hand, and whispered in my ear, can you believe how long it's been since we've had a girls' night out? I started counting on my fingers and almost cried. 1 year and 4 months. A full 487 days. Annie sighed. So this is what a man in love is like. Does he even remember that he didn't come home for 6 months straight? Now he wants to have you chained to his belt loop. The change is insane. Don't even start. It's a long, sad story. And I don't dare complain. The second he gives me that sad puppy dog look, I can't even say no. I just want to hug him and kiss him. Annie, wait, is this a complaint? Why does it smell suspiciously like lovey-dovey crap? Let's not talk about him. I said, excitedly clinking my glass against Annie's. Tim probably won't be back all week. Let's have some fun. Yeah. The lights and music swirled around me. I didn't notice my phone on the table, its screen lighting up and going dark, over and over again. It was late into the night when I finally saw the messages from Kara. I stared at the screen, at a series of texts all ending in exclamation points, and my drunken haze evaporated. Sophie, change of plans, Tim is coming back tomorrow morning. Sophie, Tim said he's not waiting for tomorrow, he's coming back tonight. Sophie, are you home? Tim is on his way home. Sophie. Where are you? Tim is looking for you. Sophie, are you at C Club? Someone saw you there. Sophie, Tim is on his way to get you. Sophie. Run. You're done for. You're so dead. I was, in fact, done for. Because, I could already see Tim. I don't know how long he'd been sitting there. He had obviously spotted me a while ago. When I saw him, he was sitting calmly amongst a group of people, watching me. He even smiled and raised his glass to me in a mock toast. The lights flickered, and across the not-so-great distance, Tim watched me and smiled. A smile that was full of threat. A chill ran up my spine. He motioned to his phone. I picked mine up and saw a message from him. I told you, didn't I? It's not impossible. I remembered a conversation we'd had once. When I thought he was a psycho, I asked him if he would ever hit me. He had said, it's not impossible. You can still make a run for it. Another message came through. I grabbed my jacket and bag and bolted. Tim followed behind me, his long legs eating up the distance. In that moment, I felt like a character in a horror movie. But as I ran, I started to feel like something was off. Why? Why am I running? I stopped and turned to look at Tim. He had his hands in his pockets, a fond smile on his face. It dawned on me. You were doing that on purpose to scare me? What else? He walked over and pinched my cheek. Did you really think I'd ever have the heart to hit you? You're so mean, scaring me like that. You're the mean one, Tim said, pulling me into his arms. Going out to party without telling me. You made me worry. I was just afraid you'd be upset, I said, wrapping my arms around his waist and looking up at him from his embrace. So you weren't afraid I'd be angry when I found out? If you got angry, I snuggled into his chest, I would just have to sweet-talk you. Well, I'm angry now, Tim said, putting on a serious face. How are you going to sweet-talk me? Like this. I stood on my toes and kissed his left cheek. Is the anger gone now? Nope, Tim said, shaking his head. What about this? I stood on my toes and kissed his right cheek. Still no. You're so greedy. How about this, then? I grabbed his collar, stood on my tiptoes, and pressed a deep kiss onto his lips. Tim held me tight. We were only inches apart. He looked into my eyes, his voice deep and mesmerizing. That's more like it. Don't hide things from me again, you hear? I worry about you. I know. When he looked at me like that, I couldn't refuse him anything. This whole game of cat and mouse was just a little lover's game. Because I love him, I'm happy to play along.